All right, yellow people, welcome back. This is question number 3 from the AQA Chemistry Paper 1, 2018, higher tier. So it says here, a student plans a method to prepare pure crystals of copper sulfate. The student method is 1. Add 1 spatula of calcium carbonate to diluted hydrochloric acid in a beaker. When the fizzing stops, heat the solution with a Bunsen burner until the liquid is gone. The method contains several errors and does not produce copper sulfate crystals. Explain the improvements the student should make to the method so that the pure crystals of copper sulfate are produced. All right. So first of all, again, we're gonna start and we're gonna use the bond technique. So we're gonna go for B, U, N. Remember, B stands for box the command, and this is asking us to explain the improvements. Okay, now when we go to U is to underline the information, and then let's see what we got here. So the student plans the method to prepare pure crystals of copper sulfate. Okay, copper sulfate. Now it says that he added 1 spatula of calcium carbonate. So he reacted calcium carbonate to diluted hydrochloric acid, and he used hydrochloric acid. Okay, when the fizzing stopped, heat the solution with the Bunsen burner until all the liquid is gone. The method contains several errors and does not produce copper sulfate crystals. Okay, now it says improvement the student should make so that copper crystal sulfates are produced. Now the N, we're looking at 6 marks. Okay, 6 marks. So you got 2 points over here. First of all, you need to identify what the mistake was. Okay, and then you need to outline the right way of doing this practical. Now let's start with some basics. Copper sulfate is going to be a salt. We got calcium carbonate over here. Okay, calcium carbonate. So he is essentially saying, I'm gonna put in calcium carbonate. Then he's gonna add hydrochloric acid and he's gonna get copper sulfate crystals. That's what he thinks. Okay, so here's the first mistake. You cannot get copper sulfate if you don't have a metal oxide or any sort of metal compound that has copper. The metal that he's using here is calcium, so he is not going to get copper, okay? And that there is the first mistake. Now, the second mistake is that he's using hydrochloric acid. Therefore, any salt that he makes is gonna have a name chloride, not sulfate. So that means that the acid that he needed to use was sulfuric acid, not hydrochloric acid. So in order to get this result, this salt, what he should actually do is the following. And then he will get the copper oxide. Okay, obviously normally once you get a over here you get a calcium carbonate, any metal carbonate with an acid is going to give you a salt, is going to give you water, and it's also going to give you carbon dioxide. So in here you can say plus H2O plus CO2. Okay, but that won't be necessary for you. It's just something for you to know, okay, just in case you get a question that is a bit more specific. Now copper oxide, so making a when you add in a metal oxide plus an acid, you're gonna get salt, and then you're also gonna get water as a result. Okay, so let's see, that's gonna be H2O. Okay, now just so we can illustrate what is happening here, what you're going to get, well, in this specific question they're asking you about this specifically, but I'm gonna highlight it just so we know what is actually going on here. I'm gonna explain and not highlight it. So we got copper oxide, and that's gonna be CuO, and now we know the copper is gonna be a transition metal, so the charge is gonna be 2+, and then the oxide is going to be -2, so that's why you need one of each. +2 and -2, they cancel each other out, so they make a stable compound. And then you're gonna have the sulfuric acid, H2SO4, Okay, so the copper over here and sorry, my bad, this is not copper oxide. I should have written down copper sulfate here. All right, there we go, copper sulfate. So I was saying, so the copper and the sulfate portion of it, okay, the sulfate portion of it here are going to make the copper sulfate. That's going to be SO4. Remember, SO4 is going to have a -2 and it's an ion. And then you got the H2O, which ends up making your water over there, okay? Just wanted to point that out just so you know where those come from, okay? So you could never get the copper sulfate if you're using calcium carbonate and hydrochloric acid. Now, we have identified the mistakes, so we got to get this done. So let's see. That there is going to give us 1 mark. We have identified one mistake, and then we have actually improved the method so that it can actually produce the copper sulfate crystals. Now, the second thing is that the student should have used sulfuric acid instead of hydrochloric acid. Now, it's very important that you remember that you do not write outside the box, okay? For the purpose of explaining this, I've kind of gone a little bit over, but you should never write outside. And I believe that is because anything that is written on the outside wouldn't actually get marked or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. I've never marked for AQA, but just make sure you don't write outside the box, okay? Very important. Okay, so we have identified 2 of the mistakes there, and we have made a correction for them. That is 2 marks in itself. And then we need to make sure that we express the rest of it, okay? So one of the things that we need to say is that the copper oxide needs to be added in excess. Okay, so that is your mark number 3. The copper oxide needs to be added in excess. It needs to be stirred with a glass rod. Now, the next part that it wasn't mentioned over here in the method from the student is that the excess copper oxide that did not dissolve in the acid needs to be filtered off, because all you want is the copper sulfate solution, okay? Then the solution that has been filtered, the filtrate of copper sulfate, needs to be put on a evaporating basin on top of a water bath to heat it up slightly, and then it needs to be taken off and left to dry for a few days. Okay, so there you have it. So let's count the marks. So you get 1 mark for saying that the student uses copper oxide instead of calcium carbonate. Second mark is student uses sulfuric acid instead of hydrochloric acid. Third mark is that the copper oxide needs to be added in excess and stirred with a glass rod. Mark number 4 is that the excess undissolved copper oxide needs to be removed by filtration. Now, in this case, you could mention the equipment, say into a conical flask using a funnel and filter paper, but just by saying filtration, it is implicit that that is what you're going to do, okay? Unless they are asking you specifically for the mention the equipment, then you could just write down filtration. Now, the filtrate or / copper sulfate solution needs to be placed in an evaporating basin on top of a hot water bath to be warmed up a little bit. That could be your mark number 5. And then also that you're gonna leave it for a few days to dry until the crystals form, okay? And that will be your mark number 6, all right? So this is only a 6-mark question for question number 3. So click on the next video so we can have a look at question number 4. Thank you very much. Right, so there you have it. Quick time revision. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.